So, have you ever wondered how the world's most successful businesses manage the absolute chaos of big data? I mean, millions of data points are generated every single second. But raw data alone, it doesn't build a business. Insights do. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack exactly how companies transform these overwhelming mountains of information into highly profitable strategic decisions.
Here's our agenda for today. First, we'll look at the analytics spectrum. Second, a deep dive into descriptive analytics. Third, the 5-step process. Fourth, climbing the ladder. And finally, the privacy imperative.
All right, Section 1, the analytics spectrum, decoding big data.
You know, massive data sets are essentially useless without specific analytical models to actually decipher them. It's kind of like having a giant puzzle with no picture on the box. We use 4 core types of analytics to evaluate data. First, we've got descriptive analytics, which basically asks, what occurred? Then comes diagnostic analytics, exploring why did it occur? Next is predictive analytics, examining what could occur. And finally, prescriptive analytics, which determines what should occur. Now, while each approach brings its own distinct benefits to the table, when you combine them, these tools become an exceptionally valuable asset for literally any corporation.
Moving right along to Section 2, Deep Dive, Descriptive Analytics.
Let's dive right into the foundational first rung of our ladder. Descriptive analytics is a really frequently employed style of analysis, and it focuses exclusively on what has already happened in an organization. Unlike the more advanced models we'll see a bit later, it doesn't draw inferences or make forecasts. Instead, it serves as a basic essential starting point to prep data. It's actually the simplest kind of data analytics because it employs simple mathematics. Think basic arithmetic, averages, and percentage changes, rather than super complex computations.
And because it relies on simple math, descriptive analytics produces visual tools like pie charts or bar charts that really bridge the gap between data scientists and everyday managers. Take a look at this breakdown of engagement metrics, for example. By simply presenting historical data in a readily digestible format just like this, descriptive analytics can and absolutely should be easily understood by a broad corporate audience.
Which brings us to Section 3, the 5-step process of descriptive analytics.
According to expert Dan Vesett, getting to those digestible charts is a 5-step sequential journey. You don't just pull data randomly out of thin air. First, you decide the business metrics and identify the data requirements. Then comes the heavy lifting, preparing and collecting that data. Finally, you analyze the data and present your findings. Let's look a little bit closer at a few of these crucial steps.
So, the absolutely crucial point for step 1 is establishing the right metrics to evaluate performance against corporate objectives, like increasing revenue or operational efficiency. Vesett warns us that the effectiveness of this entire process relies heavily on KPI governance. If a company doesn't have a strict consensus on what their data actually means, well, their analytics are going to play a very minor role in decision-making.
Right, so once metrics are set, we move to steps 2 and 3. Businesses catalog and arrange the appropriate data sources, like databases and reports, to extract exactly what they need. This flows straight into data preparation, which involves publishing, transforming, and cleaning the data to ensure correctness. And here's a quick reality check for anyone looking to get into this field. Cleaning the data is often one of the most time-consuming tasks for an analyst. It's a grind for sure.
But once that data is finally clean, step 4 is where the magic happens. Analysts employ specific techniques like summary statistics, clustering, pattern tracking, and basic regression analysis. These techniques are used to discover historical trends and reveal how well the company is actually performing against its corporate goals.
Now, check out the relationship between value and complexity here. Once descriptive data is presented in Step 5 using those handy charts, the organization has its baseline. Descriptive analytics is low complexity, sure, but also relatively low value compared to what comes next. Once that foundation is laid, though, we're totally ready to tackle the higher value, more complex models.
Let's get into Section 4, climbing the analytics ladder.
Let's move up the ladder and see exactly how advanced tools build directly upon our descriptive foundation. If descriptive analytics tells you that a specific metric dropped last month, diagnostic tools go a step further to ask, why did this occur? Analysts do this through data discovery, drilling down into the metrics, data mining, and finding correlations to really establish the root cause. But what if you want to look forward? That's where we hit the top 2 rungs, and the shift in agency here is huge. Predictive analytics uses probabilities and statistical modeling to basically forecast what could occur in the future. But the fourth, final, and most sophisticated step is prescriptive analytics.
It doesn't just guess the future, it tells the business exactly what they should do about it by providing actionable recommendations. To truly understand this, just look at how it empowers an entire organization. These advanced models, whether they're applied to e-commerce anticipating preferences, healthcare predicting patient outcomes, or even your GPS prescribing optimal travel routes, they ultimately exist for one reason. They translate discoveries into insights that allow executives, managers, and operational personnel to make highly educated, prudent business choices rather than just guessing in the dark.
Finally, Section 5, the privacy imperative and data governance.
As incredible as these tools are, we've got to bring the narrative back down to earth for a second. As organizations hunt for revenue and try to enhance corporate efficiency using big data, protecting individual privacy becomes an absolutely critical necessity. Both public entities and the business sector have to consider the actual human beings behind the data points.
Because of this tension and the inherent risks of relying on massively complex systems, managers cannot just operate in a wild west of data. As more and more firms seek out huge, complex data sets to enhance their corporate effectiveness, the frequency of false positives and anomalies actually increases. So, strict global regulations are becoming increasingly required to keep public entities and businesses in check.
And that brings us to the core tension of the modern business world. We've climbed the analytics ladder from simple descriptive charts all the way up to incredibly complex prescriptive systems. But I want to leave you with this provocative thought to end our explainer today. As we increasingly rely on the immense power of big data to dictate our optimal paths to profit, how do we ensure that individual privacy isn't left behind in the dust?
Today, we're talking about descriptive analytics. It's basically the essential first step in any organization's data journey, the ultimate baseline that tells you exactly where you stand right now. To get there, here's our roadmap. We're going to cover: what is descriptive analytics? 2. The social media connection. 3. Finding patterns through comparison. 4. Pros and cons explored. And finally, 5. Real-world business applications. We've all seen daily reports, right? But here's a really fundamental question for you. When a company ships a new product, runs a massive ad campaign, or literally just opens its doors for the day, how do they gather all those moving parts into a single understandable reality? Honestly, how do businesses actually know what happened yesterday? Well, the answer lies in descriptive analytics. Simply put, this is the regular use of aggregated historical data to provide a snapshot of an organization's activities. Now, notice I said historical. We aren't predicting the future here. This isn't some crazy complex predictive math. We're simply using past data to paint a crystal clear, undeniable picture of what has already occurred. And as our source material brilliantly outlines, this practice is a completely expected, standard part of day-to-day operations. It focuses on historical overviews, gathers social metrics, and while it absolutely does not predict the future, it gives businesses those foundational, easy-to-understand insights they need to make immediate operational changes. So let's kick things off with Section 1. What is descriptive analytics? Every organization uses descriptive analytics regularly. We're talking about standard company reports on things like inventory, workflow data, sales figures, and revenue. Now, while those might sound a bit dry, these types of everyday reports collected data that can be readily aggregated. They provide a crucial historical overview of a company's activities. It is literally the pulse of daily operations. Moving right along to Section 2, the social media connection. Let's look at a specific metric, like average replies per post. Social analytics are virtually always a type of descriptive analytics. By calculating a simple number like this, businesses take a mountain of raw interactions and turn them into tangible descriptive insights. It tells a marketing team exactly how engaged their audience was. And the best part? They don't need advanced statistical models to figure it out. But it obviously goes way wider than just replies. We're talking about tracking the total number of followers, likes, and posts, overall page visits, response times to customer inquiries, and even reading through Facebook and Instagram comments. These social analytics aggregate simple clicks and comments into powerful snapshots. These are then utilized to better comprehend user sentiments. It essentially forms a clear historical record of exactly how people are reacting to a brand right at this moment. Next up, Section 3, finding patterns through comparison. Okay, imagine looking at an annual income report that looks incredibly financially encouraging in isolation. Like maybe you hit a major revenue milestone. Awesome, right? But when that exact same report is compared against past years, it suddenly reveals a declining trend. Comparing historical data against itself surfaces these vital patterns and significance that looking at data in isolation would completely hide. Basically, context turns raw data into a story. Let's transition to Section 4, Pros and Cons Explored. Here is the hard truth about this tool. It does not seek to go beyond the surface data and analysis. That means extra inquiry falls completely outside the scope of descriptive analytics. It tells you exactly what happened, but not what will happen or even why it happened. You absolutely cannot derive complex conclusions or predictions from this type of analysis. However, the advantages for your day-to-day workflow are massive. Because descriptive analytics depends purely on historical data and basic computations, this technique is easily applicable to daily operations. Plus, you don't need an in-depth understanding of analytics to use it. Firms can report on performance super quickly and simply to acquire insights. But the trade-off is just as clear. It stops at the surface. You get rapid insights to make quick changes, but it can't forecast the future. Think of it like a rearview mirror, definitely not a crystal ball. Finally, Section 5. Real-world business applications. Ultimately, descriptive analytics actively assists organizations in measuring performance to ensure their objectives and goals are reached. In practice, this means a few things. Step 1, summarizing past events like marketing campaigns or sales and operational data. Step 2, measuring social media usage and engagement, like tracking Facebook or Instagram likes. Step 3, reporting general market trends. And Step 4, compiling survey data. And hey, if goals are not reached, these simple, practical applications immediately indicate the specific areas requiring improvement or change. So that leaves us with a critical, strategic question. Descriptive analytics tells you exactly what happened, but are you ready to ask why? We've mastered the historical snapshot today, but if your descriptive data highlights that your sales suddenly dropped, finding out why requires a completely different tool. So take a look at your own reports today. What is your data telling you? And are you ready to dig deeper? We're putting on our proverbial trench coats and grabbing our magnifying glasses, because we are talking all about diagnostic analytics. Think of diagnostic analytics as a seasoned detective trying to solve a really complex data mystery. In the modern business world, companies generate absolute mountains of data. Sales numbers, click-through rates, production costs, you name it. But just having that data isn't enough. We need to interrogate it. We need to uncover the hidden stories and motivations behind all those numbers to truly understand our business landscape. So let's dive right in. The absolute ultimate question diagnostic analytics tries to answer when looking at any business outcome is simply, why did this occur? I mean, that's the core of the whole investigation, right? Whether a company sees a sudden thrilling spike in seasonal sales or, on the flip side, an alarming drop in website traffic, just knowing that it happened doesn't actually help us replicate the success or fix the problem. We really have to dig into the data to discover the important insights and find out the exact reasons why. Section 1, the why behind the data. To actually solve our case, we've got to look way past just the scene of the crime to find the real motive. It's time to move beyond surface-level facts and enter the realm of true analytical deduction. Notice the contrast here between these two foundational phases of data analysis. On the left, we have descriptive analytics. For the vast majority of businesses, this is the first and most straightforward method. It literally just records what already happened, kind of like a security camera catching the events. But on the right, we have diagnostic analytics. This goes a vital step forward by revealing the actual rationale behind particular outcomes. It doesn't just show us the footage, it tells us exactly why the suspect was there in the first place. And this leap from asking what happened to why did it happen, it really takes us so much deeper into the data's hidden meaning. Sure, moving from descriptive to diagnostic analytics definitely bumps up the complexity, but wow, it skyrockets the value. We aren't just staring at a daily report of production costs anymore. We're actively correlating different data sets to find the absolute root cause of why those costs suddenly spiked. Section 2, the diagnostic toolkit. Now, a good data detective never rolls up to a crime scene empty-handed. Analysts rely on 4 main strategies to really pinpoint the parameters of their investigation. First up is data discovery, where analysts identify the exact data sources that will assist them in interpreting the outcomes. Then we've got drill down, data mining, and identifying correlations. These are literally the tools that let us filter out the noise and zero right in on those consistent connections that explain our business mysteries. Let's look a little closer at a couple of these. Okay, first, let's totally demystify drill down. In plain English, it really just means focusing our magnifying glass on one specific, highly granular area of the data. For instance, imagine a company report shows a sales rep closed significantly fewer deals 1 month. Well, that's our descriptive data. But when we drill down into the specific daily logs, boom, we might discover that there were actually fewer workdays for that rep due to a 2-week vacation. The mystery is solved simply by looking a bit closer at a specific segment of the information. Then we have data mining. You can think of data mining as the absolute heavy lifting tool of our whole operation. It's the automated extraction of information from vast quantities of unstructured data. When you have massive, messy data sets that are just way too large for any human to comb through manually, data mining algorithms step in. They sift through all that digital soil, uncovering hidden patterns, groupings, and outliers that a human eye would almost certainly miss, providing us with vital clues we wouldn't find otherwise. But you know, a great detective knows the answer isn't always inside the house. To establish true causality, an analyst frequently has to look for trends totally outside of the organization's own databases. They've got to identify all the necessary external data sources to use. Honestly, sometimes establishing a concrete link requires blending your internal sales data with outside info, stuff like socioeconomic influences, market surveys, or even weather patterns, to finally be able to say, aha, so that is why it happened. Section 3. Advantages of diagnostic analytics. All right, so now that we know how the detective actually works, let's shift gears to the practical benefits. Why does implementing this mindset even matter to a modern organization? Well, data is playing a ridiculously important role in every company right now, and diagnostic tools help us make the absolute most of it. By asking relevant questions and doing really in-depth analyses, we derive incredible value. But the real magic happens when these tools transform raw, super complicated data into actionable visuals. That allows the insights to be easily communicated across the entire organization, so literally everyone can utilize them to solve problems. Though, to pull this off effectively, you for sure need a business intelligence platform that is highly adaptable, nimble, and configurable. Section 4. Real-world diagnostic examples. Let's transition into a few real-world case files to ground all these theoretical advantages in practical reality. If you want to run diagnostic analytics on your internal data to figure out the why, you're generally going to follow this standard procedure. Step 1. Set up this study by determining the exact question. Are we investigating a decreased click-through rate on our website, or maybe a massive positive surge in sales? Step 2, we set up the analysis and gather our data sets, both internal and external. You might find a single root cause, or you might need numerous data sets to establish a solid link. And step 3, apply a filter to the findings so that only the most significant factor, or maybe 1 or 2 potential factors, actually make it into your final report, creating a really convincing argument. And actually, during that second step, we frequently use mathematical tools like linear regression. I know it sounds super complex, but it basically just involves fitting a collection of variables to a linear equation to help identify relationships. Say we think one variable, like a major shortage of warehouse staff, is affecting another variable, like delayed product shipments. Regression analysis helps us connect those exact dots and completely isolate that cause and effect relationship. But keep in mind, patience is definitely a virtue in data detection. A data model matures like a superb wine does. It really does. The longer you let your data model collect information and observe historical interactions over time, the more precise and refined your diagnostic results are going to be. You can't rush a good vintage, and you absolutely cannot rush a highly accurate diagnostic model. So imagine a detective's briefing board showcasing 2 totally distinct departmental case files. In the first scenario, an HR department wants to examine employee performance. By using tools like Python or R for some in-depth examination, they can search for correlations between quarterly performance levels, absenteeism, and weekly overtime hours to figure out exactly why productivity is fluctuating up and down. Then, in the second scenario, think about a cybersecurity team trying to protect the company. They can investigate the relationship between their current security rating and the number of actual incidents. They can also look at, say, reaction teamwork versus the average time to resolution. By diagnosing exactly why certain breaches happen and why some just take way longer to fix, the company can utilize this data to design targeted preventative measures for their most vulnerable regions. It's a real game changer. Which brings us to the end of our investigation today and leaves you with this final vital question. What hidden whys are waiting to be discovered in your own data? Every organization is sitting on an absolute mountain of clues. By moving beyond just asking what happened and fully adopting the toolkit of a diagnostic data detective, you can uncover the actual truth behind your business outcomes and drive real, actionable change. Thanks for joining me on this Explain.